Welcome to our DS5110 final project presentation. I'm Michelle.
And I'm Rochelle.
And we built an interactive R-Shiny dashboard for the Behavioral Risk Factor Surveillance System, or BRFSS for short. BRFSS is the world's largest continuously running health survey, run by the CDC with the states, which aggregates over 2.7 million rows of survey summary data across all U.S. states and territories and decades of data. Specifically, we are analyzing summary data between 2011 and 2023. This project requires that we correctly re-aggregate those summaries into higher-level confidence intervals, merging inconsistent response categories and inconsistent breakout IDs across years. Our dashboard follows the layered selection model recommended in the project description. At the top left of the interface, users may choose a class, then a topic, then a specific question. This prevents overwhelming the user with over 100 questions and matches the hierarchical structure of the BRFSS metadata.
With that, we'll go into showing how we implemented this in our UI. We designed this interface emphasizing clarity and repeatability, avoiding unnecessary embellishments and instead focusing on reliable, correct aggregation. The first feature of note is our question selection tool. To select a question, a user can first filter by class and topic to find an area of interest, either by scrolling through the pop-up search suggest or typing in keywords. Once a question is selected, there are 8 rows of panels populated with percentage bar graphs, aggregating the data across various demographic categories such as age, sex, and region. Each of these panels contains a drop-down in which the user can select a level of granularity other than the automatic all, looking at one category at a time, or as in the case for temporal and state panels, aggregating data into smaller categories like region or decade. We maintain a consistent visual style throughout our graphs, and incorporated a floating legend on the right applicable to each of them, which can also be dragged by the user to a place on the screen that best fits their needs. The last feature to note is the data table that provides more information on confidence intervals for each bar bin. It can be triggered by clicking on the graph in question and disappears when a new granularity level or question is selected.
One feature we include is the tabular display of confidence interval data. How this works. We reverse the category percentage back to estimated person counts using sample size, sum across rows, recompute the overall sample size, and then compute a new aggregate percentage and 95% confidence interval using standard deviations around the mean. Every subpanel uses this workflow, with only one breakout filter applied at a time, exactly as required.
Now we will demonstrate our dashboard functionality. We begin with the overall panel. For our first panel walkthrough, here is an example of the overall data with the question, "What is your age?" in the class demographics. As you can see, it aggregates all data across years and categories into one column, with the right-hand legend specifying which color corresponds to what age category. If you click on the graph, confidence interval data on the responses comes up, showing the confidence interval for each age category.
Now we move on to the temporal panel. The temporal panel allows selection of individual years or decade groups. Where appropriate, we compress 2010s and 2020s into decade-level bins when by decade is selected. We're currently looking at the question adults aged 65 plus who have had a flu shot within the past year. Based on this display, it is evident that immunization rates for people in the range 65 plus rise significantly in the 2020s compared to the 2010s.
The next panel to discuss is the sex panel. For this panel, we can look at the difference between male and female responses to a question like, "Consumed fruit less than 1 time per day?" We can find this question by entering vegetable or fruit into our class selection, which automatically populated the question on fruit consumption. It would appear that females eat more fruits than males across United States territories.
The next panel to discuss is the age panel. We have 6 standard age categories that we derived by the behind-the-scenes merging of categories age 01 through age 26, which hold data for ages 18 through 80. In our example, we're looking at the question, have you ever been told by a doctor that you have diabetes? As we can see, diabetes increases as age increases, and the age with the highest risk of gestational diabetes is in the 35 to 44 years category. Additionally, if it is difficult to read the percentage of a particular marker, the user may click on the graph to trigger the data table to display numerical percentage data on the question.
Next, we study the education panel. We can look at the question, what is your annual household income, within the demographics category, to find that college education may significantly impact one's chance of earning a higher income, aka above 50K, whereas not graduating high school indicates high likelihood of having a lower income, below 15K. Also noticeably, age correlates with income level. Since age is also often correlated with the level of education, we would need to consider this before drawing any conclusions about causality. This is how the multi-panel UI can help understand relationships within our data.
Next, we assess the race panel via the following search parameters. We're looking at the question, do you have any kind of healthcare coverage in the class healthcare access/coverage? The resulting graph that we see is indicative of disproportionate health coverage of different regions and races across the US. This could be potentially interesting to study since undercoverage, particularly concentrated in an area, is a concern, as is discrimination in policy underwriting.
Moving now to the income panel, where we examine the question, visited the dentist or clinic within the past year, within the oral health class. The income results for this question are indicative of the unaffordability of medical procedures, including dental visits, for lower income groups, rendering these services inaccessible to a significant portion of the population.
Finally, we examine the state-region panel via race demographics. We're currently looking at the question, what is your race/ethnicity in the demographics category? When selecting all states, we can see significant differences in race proportions in several states and territories. Puerto Rico and Guam stand out most, further highlighted when changing the granularity control to display by region. This concludes our display of the UI. To summarize this project, we built a BRFSS dashboard that is accurate, stable, and intuitive. This provides a good foundation for performing early-stage exploratory data analysis by showing data broken down into various categories side by side, providing an opportunity to explore potential relationships that can later be used in regression analysis. Thank you for watching our demonstration.